There's a significant financial impact, and there's always political impact of any immigration legislation. Significantly, to me, President Obama has indicated a strong desire, a strong indication that he would support comprehensive immigration reform. Comprehensive reform. It is important. Basically, comprehensive reform would be three components. Clearly, one of them would be controlling the borders. There's no way to pass legislation without that. The second would be to provide a path to legalization for undocumented individuals in the United States. Some path, some mechanism to address those people, as President Obama said, are in the shadows. Yesterday, what the administration has publicly announced is a major shift. The shift will be away from sanctioning workers' indiscriminate raids, but rather to fine employers, to seek out employers who have a pattern and practice of violation of immigration laws, employers who harbor, employers who procure fraudulent documentation for workers. That will be the focus of immigration raids in the future. It will be directed at employers. And now I think we're on the threshold of seeing significant legislation that hopefully will change the landscape again in a favorable manner. Thank you.
May Day began in the United States with a workers' strike in Chicago and the massacre in Chicago, and then intentionally, on the part of dominant groups, was no longer celebrated in the United States. And now, as May 1st is also International Immigrant Rights Day, the immigrant struggle is bringing May 1st back into the forefront as a national day of protest and celebration on the part of workers. A war is going on. There's the war in Iraq, there's the war in Afghanistan, but there's also a war here at home, and it's a war against immigrants. And if we want to understand this war, if we want to understand the intensification of anti-immigrant politics, and if we want to understand the legislation that's going to be introduced and everything surrounding this, we really need to understand the system that we live in at this time, this new global system that has emerged over the last 30 years. All countries around the world have been forced to integrate into this new globalized production and financial system, which is driven by transnational corporate power. And this has displaced millions of people around the world. And this new system of globalized production and finance, corporate system, needs a labor supply, needs a cheap and controllable labor supply. So billions of people have been displaced around the world as this system has expanded, and then those displaced people become the cheap, controllable labor supply, and that's the larger context in which we need to understand the story of immigrants. In this system, the US and the global economy is increasingly dependent on immigrant labor, particularly immigrant labor that can be super exploited and super controlled. So we need to be very clear that the US economy and the global economy would grind to a halt without immigrant labor. Sustaining such an immigrant labor force means creating and also constantly reproducing the division of workers into immigrants and citizens. And this is the new axis of inequality worldwide. The division of the global working class into immigrant workers and citizen workers. So it is the aim of the powers that be not to do away with Latina immigrant labor and other immigrant labor groups, but rather to exercise repressive control over these groups. And it's this condition of being deportable that they wish to create and to preserve, since that condition assures the ability to super-exploit with impunity and to dispose of these workers without consequences should this labor demand its rights and its dignity. It's only mass struggle that can turn this around. And remember those 3 points of unity in that poster I held up. An immediate end to raids and deportations, full legalization for all, no guest worker programs. Obama, with a simple executive order, he doesn't even need to discuss this in Congress. With a presidential decree, he can call an immediate moratorium on raids and deportations, and we need to demand that.
Currently, there are 65,000 undocumented students who graduate from U.S. high schools every year, and 40% of those are living in California. Many of these students are eligible to pay in-state tuition through Assembly Bill 540, which, if they have been in high school for 3 years, have graduated, and intend to apply for legalization, then they can pay the cost of in-state tuition. However, despite this pathway, the cost of in-state tuition is extremely high for most of these low-income students, and tuition isn't getting any cheaper nowadays. And there's currently no federal or state financial aid provided for students in this situation, meaning that all costs must be paid out of pocket, which makes it nearly impossible for students to complete a higher education. And even when students are able to overcome these major obstacles, the lack of a social security number prevents them from applying their degrees towards their professional labor. And most must resort to low-skill, labor-intensive jobs, even when they have the capacity and excellence to move this country's economy forward.